name is Albert Jones. I was born here in Towns County, in the Lower Hightower area. Went to school that started Upper Hightower, I guess. Went to school up there for about a year. And I remember Elton Sprinkles, I think, was my teacher up there, the first one. And then
When were you born, Albert?
I was born in July the 7th, 1934.
Is it okay if we use this for educational purposes?
Yes, you can use this for educational purposes.
Thank you.
Glad to do it. So, and then went to school in Lower Hightower Elementary School, and some of our teachers there were Fred Walls, I remember, was a teacher there one time. Lorraine Puckett at the time was also taught there, and Miss Pearlie, she was the trimmer, as they called it then, teacher for quite a while.
I have a question about that. Did Inslee, your dad, teach there?
No, he did teach one time at, when he was a young fella, I think even before he married Mother there.
Okay. Pine
On
Grove?
Scataway.
Okay, Pine Grove.
Scataway, yeah, Pine Grove, I think.
And this is Georgia we're talking about here?
Yes, yeah, in the Scataway community there. And on to high school here, went to Hiawassee. Well, we kind of have to back up a little. We moved to Hiawassee here for, I guess we lived down here 2 or 3 years. Lived over with Uncle Rome Burrow and took care of him. He was up about 90 then, I think. And and I went to school at the old elementary school that used to be across from the courthouse here. Well, even the old courthouse that was across the street. And I remember a teacher there was Joyce Kimsey. And, but then we moved back up to the Dermy Creek area where it comes into the lake. This is where Minnie and Esco Shook had a mill up there, had a water-powered corn mill. And we were living there when they built the lake. And they tore out the old dam, I remember there and all. The lake filled when we lived there. And then we lived over by Mr. Kelly's on Kelly Road over there for a while. Rented a place there. Then built a house on Kelly Road there, just across the bridge. The bridge goes over Hightower Creek there. It's still there, and some of your relatives live there now. And
Morelands.
Moreland. And so then from that, Korean War started. Me and J.L. Foster, was Grover Foster's son, and Douglas Arndale, and he was from Bearmead area. Gus Arndale, I think, was his father. We decided to go in the Navy. So we go off down to Gainesville and see the Navy recruiter, and he said, well, I can take 2 of you now. I haven't got my next month's quota yet. One of you will have to wait 2 weeks to go. So Doug, he waited to 2 weeks. And we went to San Diego, California, to boot camp. And then Doug caught up with us in 2 weeks, so we were all in boot camp together there. Matter of fact, I have some pictures somewhere of us in boot camp there. I saw them here not too long ago. I was looking through some old stuff. By luck, I guess, me and JL got transferred out of boot camp to New Orleans. And we stayed together for about 15 months, I guess, in New Orleans. And Doug, he stayed on the West Coast, and he went aboard ship there. And then, after the 15 months, they moved JL to, I think he went to Rhode Island, up there, and I went to California, San Diego. So, he split us up there. Anyway, went ahead and finished my tour in San Diego there in the Navy. And we had a little stint in Alaska and in Hawaii, and then a lot of stuff off the coast of California there, training. We used to work with the Marine Corps quite a bit, and out of Camp Pendleton, up in that area. So then there were other people from here. I remember Tommy McNabb was aboard ship there when we were out in San Diego, and I used to visit Tommy. So later on, when I got out of the Navy, come back to Hiawassee here.
Let me ask, did you go out 6 months on the ship and then come back, or did they do that then?
No, we were sometimes a month, sometimes 6 weeks. We went to Alaska, and wonderful time of the year in January. And we did some training with the Marine Corps up in the Aleutian Islands. And in this modern day and time, you probably see on the TV the deadliest catch, I think it is, of the fishermen and crab boats and all that. Well, that rough water they're in was not faked, I'll guarantee you. We were in the storm for about 5 days off the coast in the Gulf of Alaska, and had nothing but sandwiches. They couldn't cook anything because we were riding the waves too much there. You couldn't hardly stand up, much less anything else, and with a group of other ships. And then finished that tour up and came back to San Diego. Then went to Hawaii, I guess, next. We were over there for about 2 or 3 months. Then came back to San Diego. I got discharged there in San Diego. That's where I got discharged.
You remember what year?
Yeah, 1956. Fall of 56. And came back to Hiawassee here. As it usually was, there wasn't any employment really that you could say full-time employment in Towns County. So people either left and went to Ohio, or went to Illinois, or went to Michigan, or somewhere to work, because Atlanta was some work, but usually if you could get on with the gas company or Sears, or Lockheed was starting up then. They had taken over the old Bell aircraft plant that was built in World War II. I got married to a local girl here, Shelva Jean Birch. She lived over on Sunnyside area. Her mother and father were Dean Birch and Carrie Birch.
You know Carrie's maiden name?
Yes.
Or not?
Yes, I can get it for you here. Tatum lived down off of Crooked Creek there. Still nothing was going, and so the spring of, it was June, I think, of 57. I talked to a fellow I was in the Navy with out in San Diego and said, "What are you doing?" And he said, "Well, I went to work for General Dynamics company. We're working on the Atlas missile program." And I said, "Is there any employment there?" "Yes." He said, "Are you interested?" And I said, "Yep. I'm going somewhere," because there wasn't much work. Well, to back up a little, Ford and Chevrolet had a plant in Atlanta then. And I had tried down there, and I got fifth in line one time, and they said, "That's all we need." And they'd send you home, that was it. And I think the other time, I didn't even get that far. There's 10 or 12 people still ahead of me when that, so things weren't looking too good there. Anyway, so went to California. We packed up. Bob Hogsett had married Roby Gary, and they were in this, she was in the same class as Shelva Jean was, okay, my wife. Well, they wanted to go to California. So we packed up in Bob's car and headed west. And got out there, and he got a job with Rohr Aircraft there in San Diego, and I got a job with General Dynamics, later become Astronautics Division. They split off into the Missile Division away from the Aircraft Division. When they hadn't worked on that, I was involved with a missile that John Glenn rode into orbit, the Mercury program. I'll never forget, Glenn came to the factory there tour, and we were still working on the unit that put him in orbit. And he gave a little pep talk and everything. I said, "You guys do a good job. I got to ride that damn thing," he said. So worked in that, and then they came along with the Field and Service program. They were starting to put missiles in the Midwest and that area.
Now, this is a Cold War, you're talking about defense?
Yeah, Cold War defense. They were doing, and we put Topeka, Kansas, they had jobs opening there, and they came around, and it was a boost because it paid more money, and it was going to be employment for a few years there. So I said, "Yeah, put me down. I'll go to." So we went to Topeka, and we put in 9 missile sites there. I went up to Omaha, Nebraska. We were doing some sites there, and I wound up over in a little town called Missouri Valley, Iowa, home of the world champion goose calling contest. Then we're back to Topeka when they got ready for us. They were slow getting some of the sites built. Corps of Engineers were building the facility. They were building the buildings, and then we came and put the missile hardware in and all that, checked it all out, turned it over to the Air Force, and so we're back to Topeka. Well, we finish up in Topeka, and they had a little meeting and said, "Where do you want to go now?" "Well, we've got an opening in Cheyenne." I said, "Well, I haven't been to Cheyenne, so put me down. So I'm ready to go."
And Shelby Jean just went you no matter what? Shelby Jean just said, "Fine."
Well, we had got a divorce before I went in Field and Service.
Okay.
I missed it over there.
Yes, you kind of forgot that. It's okay.
Anyway, so then
How long were you married then?
we were married about 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah. We got finished up in Topeka there, and they said, "We've got an opening in Cheyenne." I said, "Well, good. I'll go to Cheyenne." So we went to Cheyenne, and I did about 9 months up there, I guess. I put in one full winter, and if you've done a winter in Cheyenne, you won't forget it. So, because it is cold and windy. Well, it was one of the few Air Force bases that didn't have a airport. They used the city airport. And the facility was Fort Warren. It was back from the old cavalry days. And so the SAC took it over, and they're still operating out there. They've got Minuteman missiles and all that in up there now. The others been obsolete quite a few years. And we finished up there and said, "Well, what next?" And we were all sitting in a room, decide where we were going to go. And so they told me they had me scheduled for Albuquerque, or Roswell, New Mexico. I said, "No, I've been out west." Was said, well, we've got openings in Plattsburgh, New York. That's right on the Canadian border. The way I got that, the guy next to me was supposed to go to Plattsburgh. And he said, no, I won't go to Plattsburgh. I will not set foot in the state of New York because I have an alimony judgment against me. So, anyway, I said, well, what if we swap? We're the same classification of jobs, you know? And they said, well, is it all right with both of you? I said, it is with me. And the guy said, yes, it is with me. So we just swapped paperwork right there. I stayed there and finished up there and then back to camp, back to San Diego again when we finished that site up. And I got married while I was up there too. Forgot to add that in there.
In New York?
No, in Vermont. Married a woman in Vermont.
Want to tell us her name?
Yes. Charlotte Manning was her name.
Okay.
Yep. Then moved from there back to San Diego. Worked out there, still on the same program, and that began to go down then. And government contracts, they come and go. They're good when they're going, but it's seesaw. Up and down.
So the Cold War was kind of winding
Yeah,
up.
to wind it down. And
What year was that?
that was 19,
When did you marry the second lady?
when we were in Vermont.
And that date was?
That was November of 1962.
Okay, and how long were you married to her?
I was married to her till 1984, and she passed away. She had cancer.
Okay, so she was with you when it wound down.
Yeah. And that we had wound up then on Nebraska, Lincoln, Nebraska, Lincoln Air Force Base, and that's when the thing shut down. And they would move me back to San Diego, but the businesses out there were in a slump then. The war winded down the whole thing, especially the aircraft and missile thing. I said, well, instead of moving me, why don't you give me a fund that would equal my move back there, and I will find me a job somewhere else. So they said, that'll work. So I came to Marietta, went to work for Lockheed. So I was down there with Lockheed for about 2 years.
Now, you know what date this was?
It
was at the end of the Vietnam War?
Yeah. What can I tie that to?
We'll get some dates later and do a
We'll get some-
chronology. That's
We'll
okay.
try to figure it out.
But you're doing great, Albert. Thank you.
Lockheed, they started laying off. And I went to work for Bendix, Eclipse Pioneer Division, on the all-weather landing system for the C-141 that Lockheed was building. That, in the meantime, I was laid off for about, I think, a month and a half or something between Lockheed and Bendix there. And so I'd put in applications here and there, and IBM was building a new plant in Raleigh, and I'd put in out there. So they said, well, we would like to hire you, but we don't have our quota put out yet, no authorizations to hire. But if something comes up, we'll call you. And if you hear that, don't call us, we'll call you. Right. And I've been with Bendix 3 months, and I get a call from IBM. You want to come up to Raleigh for another interview? Yeah. So went up there and I got a job, and they moved me up there and the whole thing. And then we stayed in Raleigh for about 2.5 years. And then the wife, being from Vermont, said, what do you think about maybe moving back up there? I said, you want to go? We'll find out. I talked to personnel there, and they said, yeah, they're needing some people up there. some of the stuff we're building is gonna be slow. We're not gonna expand any right now. Said you can put in for transfer. I put in for transfer, and 2 weeks later, I was up there house hunting. So, anyway, then I spent 14 years up there. I decided I had enough cold weather. My brother-in-law had moved to Arizona. I went out and visited him took a week's vacation, went out there. We looked over and said, this ain't bad. Put in a transfer to there. We got that. So, anyway, then I finished up with them in 1987.
Oh, she had passed away then.
Yeah, she passed away in 1984. So I retired. They were downsizing. They got rid of some of their plants and this and that. And anyway, we went ahead and I just took, they were off in early retirement, and I said, well, I've been here about 28 years, that's enough, so I got out and started taking it easy then. And did a lot of traveling. Spent three summers in Alaska, Mexico quite a bit. I had a motor home. And then I got tired of traveling and started working a little, which I threw this in here. I'll show that to you later. Did a little movie work. So got into. I had the motor home, and the guy saw my motor home one day and said, "Would you like to rent that out?" And I said, "Only if I go with it." So they said, "Well, we're shooting a film down here, a movie, and we'd like to rent it for our dressing room for one of the stars." Okay. And I thought, this don't sound right. So I called Tucson Film Commission, and they said, "Yeah, he's shooting you straight." So I wound up on a movie. The name of it was Jesse. Lee Remick starred in it, and it was about a nurse that what now is a nurse practitioner. She was a registered nurse and up in Northern California in a very remote area, mining town. And so she would take care of the people there, but she'd call the doctor and say, "So-and-so come in, he's got a fever, this and that, and I think you should have so-and-so, what do you think?" And he would either okay it or not. And anyway, she got, state of California arrested her for prescribing medicine without a license. And so out of that came some of the Good Samaritan laws, they call them now, that made it to where they could treat people to some extent, not fully, still got to have a doctor involved in it. But anyway, so I did that, and then I got through that, then I got, they got to where they were calling me for models, fashion models, Italian Vogue magazine. I had 2 different groups with them. And then...
No, whoa, what?
Hmm?
You had people that worked for you that were models?
No, they used my motorhome.
Oh, your motorhome, okay.
Yeah. You might remember this guy?
Oh, yeah.
LeVar Burton?
Yeah.
Reading Rainbow?
Okay.
I worked that, too.
Okay.
Yeah. And some of the others were...
And we'll get some of these pictures later.
Yeah, some of them you can get here. And
Well,
some of the models, there's my motorhome.
Well, I see,
and all
yeah.
that thing, and
okay.
a bunch of them. There's Osa. And anyway, some of those people.
Okay.
So got into that and did that for a while. And
Very good.
And then just started back traveling some. And well, then I got married after this. I got married again in 1989.
Her name?
Her name is Emma Hill, and she's from Oklahoma. We're still together.
That's why you're leaving Towns County, and we need to get all
Yeah.
your memories, as many as we can.
I didn't have any brothers and sisters, so I don't have any close relatives here. Got some cousins and all that. Well, probably half the county is a cousin or something. every time I get started talking to somebody, I find out, oh, they're kin to that, you know. So
So when did you come back to Hiwassee?
came back in 1994, I think it was. Bought a lot where one of the Canuck boys lived, Ott. I think it was Ott. Anyway, over on Hiwassee Estates Drive, well, across the street from Edwin Broad there. I forget whether that was well, another one of the Canuck boys lived there after that. Okay. The old house there is Frank Hedden lived there years ago. She probably remembers that.
Yes,
He used to buy muskrat skins and all that stuff, ginseng, all that. But anyway, so, and we built a double duplex there. Ralph Beverly Kimsey lives there in one end of it now, and I don't know who bought the other end, who's in that, but Beverly and her daughter live there.
It's still there.
So I sold it to Ralph, and Ralph lost it in a divorce. Beverly still lives there, so anyway. And then back to Arizona, and I was homeless for a while. I remember when my stepdaughter had a granddaughter there. The nurse, she was out of the hospital, was getting home care, and the nurse said, well, who's this? And she said, that's my stepfather. She said, and where do you live? And I said, I'm homeless. And she said, he's not homeless. That lives in that motorhome out there. I said, like I say, I'm homeless, you know. So anyway, we went ahead and traveled in that for a while. That's at the time. Then this was going on then, the models.
Oh, okay.
Because they all come to see my new granddaughter. It was when she was born. A nice group, so I had kind of an interesting thing. So outside of that, it's been, we traveled off and on. Got into the jewelry business and did Southwestern Jewelry for a while, worked for a fellow that, we were all over the country with that, California, Texas, and Florida, and over in Franklin and Asheville, and I did the Washington Hilton in Washington, D.C., a couple of 3 shows, and Baltimore, and Chicago, and all over.
And this is when you were retired.
Had to have something to do, you know. So we kind of wound that up, but then to come back to here, I've lived in Hiwassee. We moved back up on the river, on Itzy Trail up there, over there by Sparks Branch. Well, I think they call it the Wilson Bridge there, in that big bottom land along the highway there, just above where the RV park is, up on the hill there. That was a 2-story house, and that was a little too much for it. Got, after a year or 2 there with back surgeries and this and that, 2-story was not really a good idea. So we bought the one where I'm living there now.
Oh, what road is that?
Holland Drive, Young Harris.
Lakeview, off of Lakeview and Red Banks.
Red Banks, yeah.
Red Banks.
And what's the other, I'm at the intersection, Leisure Lane goes up and goes down to the lake. So,
And you just sold that house and you're going to move to
Oklahoma,
what town?
Tulsa. Well, little Sapulpa. It's kind of like Decatur and Atlanta. You don't really get out of town, you know. It's just a suburb section of town there. And we bought a house there, and we're close to, we have 3 stepchildren live there in Tulsa, so 2 boys, a girl.
These are your wife's children?
Yes. And I had 2 stepchildren before, and one of them lives in Vermont now, and the daughter, the boy does, and Gail, she lives in Arizona still. She stayed in Arizona, so I got in the middle of the country there. So anyway.
Now, you had a son.
Yes, he was in the Navy, and he had lung cancer, and he passed away. And
Who was his mama?
Georgie. And she died after that. She had cancer too. I'm trying to think what year. I was living back here then, and she was living in Spokane, Washington.
I guess we need your son's name for the record.
Steve. Steve, his mother was Carrie Birch, was a sister to Jesse Bradshaw. Right?
Sandra.
Sandra, yeah, her mother.
And then there was Bessie, wasn't it?
Uh,
Carrie's sister Bessie?
Yeah.
Clore?
Yeah, yep.
Bob Clore's
Well,
mother.
Well, she wasn't her mother, I think. She was a Tatum. Jesse and
Yeah, they were.
both of them. The 2
And
girls.
Carrie was too, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was Tatum. But their mother was the sister to Bob Clore's mother, I think. I believe that's the way it went.
Because I think there was Howard T. Tatham Sr., there was Bessie,
Yeah.
and Jesse, and Carrie.
Okay, Bessie then married to Clore then, right?
Yes,
Okay, there you go.
married Wiley Clore.
Yeah.
And that's Bob's daddy.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, see, I grew up in that
Yeah, you're
neighborhood.
down that neighborhood. isn't
Yes, I was, yes, yeah. And Mr. Bob's still a-going.
it? Oh, yeah.
He drives up here, his family tells him no, but he drives anyway.
Yeah, he sure does.
Now, Carrie only had that one daughter, right?
No, she had a boy, Winford.
That's right. You're right.
And Winford, he got off out into Virginia somewhere out there. And he had a family out there, and he died out in that area, I guess. So, because he never was around here that much. He was in Ohio to start with for a while. Then he came back here, and I think he lived over on Cold Branch or somewhere over in Tusquity. And then he wound up in Virginia, out around Blackshear or
Yeah,
Christiansburg.
Blacksburg. Yeah.
That area.
Let's go back to your grandparents. Tell us what
Okay.
you remember about, and their names, of course.
Well, my grandparents were Jethro Burrow, and they lived in Lower Hightower there, next to where Scataway Creek comes into the Hightower Creek there. And I don't remember, I can't say I really remember him. I can remember when his funeral, because I was only about 4 or 5 then,
David
yeah.
Jethro?
Yeah.
He died in 39.
1939. So I can remember. Another thing I think that I tie to that, tombstone sat on the porch for a while before they ever got it put up. And he's buried at Upper Hightower, at the Baptist church up there, what you used to call Titus. I guess still do, but anyway. Used to be a post office there years ago.
And his wife, Pink,
She was
Sellers.
at Sellers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
she died in 1957.
Yeah.
So you knew her quite a bit.
Yes. Yeah, she had a stroke and she was paralyzed and she lived, probably 3 or 4 years. She's paralyzed one side and she could, once you were around her, you could understand what she was wanting, but she couldn't really speak very well. She's paralyzed with that. The farm where they lived when Grandpa died, Raymond Kimsey bought that. Raymond and Bueller. And they had a daughter, Betty. That's
Betty
the
Sue, yeah.
only kids they had.
And he was a
And-
dairy farmer,
Yeah.
Raymond was,
Raymond had
among
cattle,
other
all.
things.
He was the superintendent of schools.
Yes,
Yeah.
superintendent of schools too.
Yeah.
But that was your,
Yeah,
Burrell
when he
family.
left the superintendent of schools, that's what he did. He went up there and he bought that farm, Grandpa.
Sellers Burl.
Yeah, she had a stroke. I think I mentioned that already. And she was bedfast for years. And JT had married at that time, and let's see, him, JT, and Roy. Well, Frank was the older one. Frank, Roy, and JT. They were living at the home place taking care of Grandma. And Roy and Frank were never married.
These are David Jethro's children.
There was JT, Roy, Frank, Troy, Leonard, Fred, and then there was Walter and Christine, I think was the girl.
These are Maybell's brothers and sisters.
Brother and sister.
Your aunts and uncles.
And Homie,
Oh, me, okay.
Homie Foster, and Maybell, my mother.
Leota,
Who?
Christine? Leota.
Christine, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, her and Walter died of the Spanish flu.
Oh,
Grady, he died, I don't know when. I don't have a date there.
Grady,
Then there was Walter, that flu got him, and Christine,
1930s when he,
30s, and Christine died 1918.
so that would be the flu.
And then there was Leonard and Fred and Homie, and
That's David,
Grandpa.
David Jethro Burl.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And then
Pink,
then Mama there,
yeah, Pink,
and then Frank. And
1971.
well, here they've got them all down here. Here we go. There was Pink Burl and Jethro Burl. That's my grandpa and grandma. And then Fred. And then it was Omi. Then Walter. Then Frank. Then Leonard. And Mama. There's Christine. And these are not, I don't think.
You're close
Yeah,
to
they're close
chronological.
to chronological. And Troy, Grady, and Roy, and JT.
Yep.
Troy.
Which ones do you remember doing things with?
Well, I can remember JT, Roy, and Frank, okay. Fred, okay. Fred, he was a horse and cattle trader, okay. And he carried the mail in Blairsville and also in Rainbow Springs. Matter of fact, I think Nana Rose and Lorraine were born in Rainbow Springs.
yes, they were. The Tathams were born there, where the pond is, there in Rainbow Springs.
So, then Jack, the other boy, Jack got killed in a car wreck over in between Murphy and Blairsville. Trying to think of the other boy. He had 2 girls there.
So you were close to your
Yeah.
first cousins?
The ones that lived over here, because,
Yeah.
back then, nobody much had cars and this and that, so. Yeah, she was talking about which one of the Burrow family that I remembered more. It was JT and Roy and Grady and Troy and Leonard and Frank and Fred. Now and Omi, okay. Some of the others were already deceased then. I spent more time with them. Spent more time with them than I did the Jones family because they had moved away from here and went to Tye, Georgia in the 20s during the Depression. And I don't know what date it was, but anyway. And Daddy, Burness, they stayed up here. Of course, Burness had married Oscar Howell. Oscar was sheriff. And at that time, the sheriff lived in the jail. And that was before it was added on to.
He was at the jail from 1941 to 1945.
Yeah.
Oscar was.
Some of them used to ask me over there and said, when they opened it up to tour, "You were born here and all?" I said, "Yeah." They said, "Do you ever spend any time here?" I said, "Oh, lots of nights. Lots of nights." Then I'd tell them I was down here with my cousins. We played and locked each other up in the jail and all that, we were kids.
Right.
Usually you didn't have anybody in jail anyhow. Maybe somebody drunk had, or they were holding to go somewhere else or something. So, and my grandma, Pinkborough, she was always good to me. I was not supposed to, I can remember, we lived across the creek. It was an old log house. And we lived in that for a while. And before that, Omi and Gaither Foster had lived over there. I wasn't supposed to smoke, but Grandma, she chewed tobacco, okay? I remember she used to have that little Brown's Mule pack of tobacco there, and she had a little knife. She'd cut her off a sliver, on that. And Frank, he would give me some Country Gentleman. He smoked roll your own, with that. And you could get a Duke's Mixture or one of the other ones. You'd get a nickel bag of tobacco then. If you had the money to get the big one, was Country Gentleman tobacco. But Bull Durham is what I was trying to think of. Tobacco, you can get it, or Duke's Mixture there for a nickel. Grandma, once in a while, she'd give me a nickel to give me a little bag of tobacco. Because as kids in school, we were smoking then, and we couldn't afford what they call the tailor-made scent, Have Luckies and Camels and all that. But if you did have a little money, and you were down around Hayesville, I remember you could get a pack of cigarettes for 15 cents. And Georgia, they were 20 cents a pack. Everybody waited to go to North Carolina to get their cigarettes in. But a lot of the kids in school smoked then. Even back then, they let you smoke in the hospital even.
Well, the teacher smoked in the classroom when I was in school.
Yeah. But Grandma, she was good. She would give me a nickel or something once in a while, A nickel was a lot of money. You get that penny candy, though. They used to have the boxes and all the different flavors, peppermint and lemon and sassafras and all that.
Stick candy, right?
Yeah, stick candy. Now you could get that from the peddler, okay? Ernest Nichols. He run the rolling store. And you could trade some eggs or you could trade some chickens. And he would come, he'd get flour, salt, sugar, and that type of stuff, thread, and chicken feed. Trade a couple of chickens for that. So, and they wasn't the only ones that had the stores. Homer K. Shook, I think he had a rolling store for a while. Ernest Brown over in Young Harris, he had a rolling store. They all had certain routes they would take, and the days they came, and all. So. But they always carried a little candy too. Some of the the other things, nowadays they've got McDonald's, a lot of people hang out down there, the locals. And it used to be, the hangout was the Texaco station. And you would have a lot of stories in the Texaco station. And I never forget the one, Fred Franks used to have a restaurant there. And Fred used to tell some tales. They weren't on nobody else, they were always about him. And I never forget the one, he was in Texaco one morning, or one day, we were, and Cater Bradshaw, the commissioner now that we have, his grandfather, he's sitting on the bench over there, and Fred's telling about he went squirrel hunting that morning. And he said, I was up here in the cove, he said, where all them hickory trees are, and he said, I sat there and shot 99 squirrels out of one tree. So, Cater's sitting over there listening to all this, and Cater never was one, he didn't talk a whole lot, you know. He said, Fred, why didn't you just make that an even 100? And Fred looked at him seriously and said, you don't think I'd lie about one little old squirrel? Anyway, they used to be, that's where you got the local gossip and all the news and who was sick and who wasn't sick and this and that. So and Clay Allen ran it for a while there. I think after he got out of the service, Ernest Noblet, he leased it from Clay. Actually, I don't think Clay owned that. His mother-in-law owned it, Blanche, because they had some money. Her husband, I'm trying to think of his first name.
Blanche Wood.
Yeah, her father. They had to move when the lake was built. Because
Yes,
they
they
used to
did.
live down there to where Bell Creek Road goes on.
Exactly.
I think he owned that. He also owned the building where Victoria's there.
Yes.
Now, and Blanche had a restaurant in there. And they had a pool room on the other side. So Oscar Howell, after he got out sheriff, he ran the pool room for a while. And that was it. And I remember the drugstore up on the corner there. Part of the same old drugstore is incorporated in that building that's there now. I think they just remodeled that. And who's in there now? The dentist, I think?
Yes, the dentist is there. Used to be the lawyer, Corey.
Yeah. And then before him, Jimmy Hooper had it.
Yes.
And, well, Jimmy's son then took it over when Jimmy retired.
And then Charles Nicholson worked there and then built over
Over where, and
close to where it was.
across from the hospital.
Yes.
The Texaco was, a lot of people hung out there, and
Now, didn't Ernest Noblet's brother, now Ernest's brother's name was Earl Noblet.
right,
Earl
Earl,
Noblet,
yes.
who had married Joyce Hedden.
Right.
Who was Ed Hedden's daughter.
right.
He ran the Texaco for a while.
Well, I think maybe he let Ernest have it, and he went to work in Atlanta, because him and Mooter Mathis had a wreck over in Helen. Coming home from Atlanta, I think it was Friday, coming home for the weekend and all. And I'm trying to think of his name. He got killed, Joyce's husband.
I'll think of it in a minute.
And she came to California and joined us out there.
Joyce did, didn't she?
Yes. And she met a guy out there, married. They used to refurbish telephones for the telephone company and all. And then, I don't know, I think he passed away and she married again, I think.
Well, I was at a class reunion, and Carol Shook was there.
Yeah.
And he told me that he brought Joyce back here to be buried. Joyce Hedden.
Yeah, I know she had cancer, and they were taking her to, I think, a cancer treatment center in Tulsa, I think it was.
Yes, that's what he said, yeah.
And I had moved in over on Hiawassee Estates at that time, And she came over there one day, and we sat on the porch for about an hour and talked about old times and one thing and another, you know. After Ernest, I think Kelsey,
Nicholson.
he took over. So I was in school with Ernest and Kelsey and all them boys, anyhow. And Joel Turpin. Well, I think Elder took it over. He married one of Clay's daughters.
Yes.
Yeah, Fred Franks, he was, always had some tall tales. He was in World War I. Fred was. And he had a scar, I remember, right on his forehead here, right in front there. Been cut or something. And he said he got that in Germany because he was riding one of them, in World War I, they used motorcycles quite a bit. Germans had motorcycles and all that. They were troop would ride them, you know, on patrols and all that. And Fred said that he rode one of those motorcycles so fast that it split the skin on his head. Ed had a bunch of kids there, Baldy and
Fedo.
and
Mary Rachel.
yeah,
Ping.
yeah. The other girl, she married, her husband was Charles.
From Blairsville. What was her name?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of his name. He taught school for a while. Okay. He was a matter of
Oh,
fact,
and we forgot.
he was in the Navy, and he got out and he went to college and he got a degree, and he was teaching the high school. He was may have been civics, because I remember he got my behind busted with one of them civics books one time, big blue ones. And I think Charles, I can't think of Charles's last name. We had those big civics books, yeah, about so by so. He'd bend you over the table and warm your behind up. Me and probably Clifford Bradshaw and the other guy that was commissioner, or was for probate judge for a while, Garrett.
Wayne Garrett.
Wayne Garrett. We had probably cut school. I think J.T. Wilson probably filled in for him and just kind of run the class. And then the next day, and also he kept a list of who didn't show up for class and turned it into the Charles Wilson, right?
Right, Charles Wilson.
So Charles lined us up and used the big book on him. Whacked you good with it, too. Now they'd put him in jail for that. Yeah, I think well, the only way you could play pool is we used to have a dime for the lunch money. It cost a dime to eat in the lunchroom, okay? If you skipped lunch, you could go play a game of pool for a dime, unless you won, and then somebody else paid for it, you know. So whoever lost to paid. Either that, or we took off and went to the apple orchard up on the hill behind the old school. There.
Brown's Orchard. Wasn't it Brown's Orchard?
Johnson owned it.
Oh, yeah, Johnson owned it
long time
first.
ago.
Yeah, and then the Browns.
Yeah, I think a London boy had it for a while, too. We'd go off up there when the apples were in season and all, and we'd play a game of pool, and we'd eat apples for lunch. So some of the kids had money. I remember the most popular guy with the girls, especially with the girls at that time, because he'd always buy candy and one thing and another, was Charles Cable. The seniors used to run a store at the gym there. They had candy, remember?
Yes, I hadn't thought about that in a while.
And he always,
Jerry Cable, right?
Yeah. he would take money out of the till over at the store in Young Harris. So he always had money. And he'd buy those girls candy bars and one thing and another, so he was real popular. Yeah.
That was John Cable's son, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So Cable's was actually a store at that
Yeah.
time.
in Young Harris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, in 1950, it was never opened, when I remember it.
No, it was. It was open
Yeah.
when I was at college in the 60s.
Yeah.
Oh, it's Ellen Sue was the one that married the Wilson.
Yes.
And the others that we forgot was Mary Rachel.
Yeah.
And Katie Wynn, that married the Waldrop,
Katie Wynn, I'm trying to remember her. I can't place her.
married Doc Waldrop's son, George Reed.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
yes.
she was older. She's a lot older
Yeah.
than us, yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of big families in.
And then Patricia, who was around Roby Garrett's age, married the Plot, I think, that was from Blairsville. Patricia?
The one that later had a junkyard over there or something?
Yes,
Yeah.
right, yeah.
I remember him. But yeah, and there was, the boy from down at Brightstown there, had a couple of initials for his name, in the moonshine business.
Oh, the Kings, the King?
No, well, Kings too, but, no, the other one.
The McClure.
McClure. Something, had two initials, Jace. Anyway, he was in high school about the time we were.
Yeah, because his grandson now has Tommy's, the moonshine, Mims Moonshine.
Yeah. Yeah, they had on-the-job training.
They did.
I'll have to tell you a story there involving those people we were talking about. One Sunday morning, we lived on Kelly Road over there then, and getting ready to go to church and all, and I hear a siren going over on the main highway coming down 76 there. And you didn't hear that much then, very seldom ever heard a siren anywhere. And Ed Barnard was sheriff, and Carlos Rhodes was the deputy, and Carlos was hanging out the window on Ed's car, and it was shooting at a little stake body Chevrolet pickup. It had been stake body put on it, had a canvas stretched over it, this and that. And they turned on what's now Kelly Road, okay, headed out that road. Well, the county used to get gravel out of the creek there, put on the roads, creek gravel. And there was a little road went down into the creek there. Well, the driver, I don't know who the driver was, but he bailed out of the truck. And he just opened the door, jumped out, and left the truck running, and it run over the side and tilted over on its side. And the driver went down that road where the county gravel trucks usually went to the creek, and he went out the other side of the creek, and Carlos went in on this side of the creek. And up above where Harlan lives there now, that pine ridge up there, all those pine trees, he headed into that running. So Carlos finally gave up the chase on foot. And they came back, and the truck had a load of moonshine on it, okay? With cases of moonshine. Half-gallon jars, okay? I think 4 of them to a box, They took the lids off of them. They'd pull a case out and just turn the box up on its side, right? And dump the whiskey out. And he kept about a case for evidence for court. And me and Max Allen, I think it was, said, could we have those jars? Because Daddy had been over there, and he'd said those would make good canning jars, canned beans and all that, and, just wash them out. So I said, can we have those jars? And Ed said, yeah, you can have them. But they didn't look too close, because when you dump it out, it only pours out up to where the lid neck starts, So there's not that much shine left in it. And we poured that up. I think we got almost a half gallon. My dad would probably kill me if he knew we did it, but anyway. And we wound up, some local people that drank a little, bought that from us. So we had a little bit of money. And Mama was happy because she had canning jars. Okay. They were coming from Rayburn County with that load of liquor there. So some interesting things like that happened down there. I'll have to mention, too, since we're right in that area talking about that, your uncle. I'm trying to remember his name. He'd come over once in a while and visit Walter there at the garage. And he was really strong. I mean, he could pick a engine block up, and Walter could too, but walk across the floor with it, a V8 block. Okay? But
It might have been Boyd.
I think it was Boyd. Yeah. I remember him. He used to come there and down to the garage and visit when he'd come over. I think he lived over around Dalton or somewhere, didn't he?
No, Boyd lived up on Fodder Creek.
No, this one lived out of town somewhere.
Otis, I don't know how strong he was. He had a brother named Herman and J.D.
I can't remember the name because your dad was a very strong man too. Walter, he could pick up an engine. As kids there, he used to tell us we didn't know how to hit or anything, And he would say, "Go ahead and hit me as hard as you can." And we'd haul off, hit him in the stomach. He'd reach down and get us by the belt, pick us up with one hand, and say, "You don't hit hard." But he used to do that. And he was strong. I'd never forget Walter. He taught me what little I know about cars now. I remember he had an old car in there one time that he finally jumped it, pushed it off out there in front, into that, what's now backfilled in there and all. He was going to show us boys how the engine run on one. So we he said, "Go in there and take the head off of one side." And he said, "Don't take the manifold loose, because the manifold will nose set right in the middle, and you had flathead V8s, So we just took one side off. So he left it to where, then he went inside and started the engine, and he said, "Now then you can see how the pistons and the valves work." I never forgot that. You could see, instead of trying to, explain it and all, you never forgot that. You knew how things worked then. And he used to teach us a lot.
That brother that you were talking about earlier could have been Paul.
Might have been.
Paul.
Yeah.
I think he
I know he was
was somewhere
real
close to
strong.
the same age as Daddy and Uncle Boyd.
And he used to pick us, well, as kids, we weighed about maybe 110 pounds or something, or 90 pounds maybe. And he used to grab us by the belt, pick one of us up. So, her father had a garage up there.
Where?
Okay. On Lower Hightower. Where the Arwood boy lives there now? There's a bunch of cars and all before you get to Kelly Road. That old building in front. Her father built that, and that was his garage there. I remember he put in a water system, a spring up there above, and had running water down there and everything. And her uncle lived in that house there.
Alec Lyons.
Yeah.
Well, his daddy built the house where Uncle Alec lived.
Yeah, that's where I was born, in that house. Daddy went to get Doc Rice, and Miss Bradley had already taken care of everything. She delivered half the kids in the neighborhood there.
Now, which Bradley was that?
That would have been Clarence Bradley's mother.
Oh.
Lived up on Bearmeat there. Yeah, she delivered. She was the midwife of that area. They'd say, "Go get Miss Bradley." It's time. No, but the people that lived in that neighborhood then was Alec Lyons lived there. And then at that time, Frank Allen lived on the first house there, like when you go up Bearmeat, start up Bearmeat, that old white house on the hill.
Yes.
Paul Foster lived there before. Paul still owned it, and Frank and I'm rented from him. And over where one of the Hooper boys lives there now, Gordon Trusty used to live over there. Oh, Ralph and Luce and JB and Javon, I think, was another one.
Doorbell and Dean used to talk about Gordon Trusty.
Yeah.
And all that family.
Yeah.
So they were close.
Yeah.
Or at least knew each other.
Yeah, well, they all lived right there in that neighborhood. And Frank, he had two girls. I'm trying to think the older girls. I can't think of their name. They both married people up on the Upper High Tower. Louise, or Lucille, was that the other one?
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
But we can correct it.
Then Doris, a little bit older than me. Jolene, and then Max. Max was my age.
Jolene Allen?
Yeah, he had three sisters. Doris, she was about 2 to 3 years older than me. Then Bonnie Moss, well, Miles Hamilton, they lived in that old store, the old building's still there. Who's got the Dina Bell, or didn't she run a store in there or something one time?
No, she didn't.
DL, I think it was DL, wasn't it?
Yeah, DL ran that store right
Across from the Moreland store.
there. Yeah, across from the Moreland store was,
Her brother, Doorbell's brother,
yeah, D.B. Dayton.
DB.
And the one you're talking about where Miles Hamilton was, the Woods, Philip Woods' dad, what was his name? Ran that store for a while.
Well, Paul Foster originally
Yes.
Had
run
it.
that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then on out was Ed Moss. He lived there, that log house,
Yeah, the log house, Ed Miles,
Yeah.
right?
and they,
He had a daughter.
yeah, and they had some boys too, one or two.
Ruth's the daughter's name, Ruth Dayton, she was a Moss.
Yeah, Ruth Dayton, that was Jack Dayton's
And one
mother.
of the sons' names was Clyde,
Right.
Clyde Moss.
Yeah, Clyde. But I'm trying to think, Ed and Bonnie's kids.
Ed and Bonnie Mouse's kids.
Now Clyde was their boy. And then there's another boy that, I think he was a lawyer, went down Florida somewhere. And I think they had a girl too.
They had a girl that was she was Miss Berry College. Now, let me think who that woman was. She married a judge, and she became a judge in Florida.
Okay, that's where I'm getting into the legal thing.
Yes, if I could remember her name. She was over at college when my aunts were. Beautiful woman.
Yeah, Ed and Bonnie. Bonnie run the store. Adam Foster. He had a little store there for a while in a corn mill. They ground meal, and they had a hammer mill that grind cow feed and all that. And then Foster's, Grover Foster's, then Harold Denton, and then Spivey's lived up on the hill above that, and Garmin Maney. That kind of was the neighborhood, you know. In Moreland, they had the swinging bridge across the creek, or the river there. I remember Arlen and Carvin, Arlen more than Carvin, he went, where did he go to school? University of Georgia or somewhere?
Dahlonega.
Dahlonega? Then he became.
And then the Medical School of Georgia in Augusta.
I know he was a doctor, and
Yeah.
Arlen got into teaching, so Dina Bell and Janet,
And Dora became she raised the children, but she became a teacher too.
yeah,
EF,
EF, and then who was the girl?
Virginia.
Virginia, there you go.
Who did you graduate with?
Well, I never felt more like singing the blues, 'cause I never thought that I'd ever lose your love. Why'd you do me this way?
Homer Hunter.
Homer Hunter.
Got to tell us about Homer and his monkey. His
Now,
pet monkey.
I was gone most of the time when Homer had the monkey, so I don't know too much about Homer's monkey there. I know him and Clay Allen used to fight all the time.
Oh, yes,
They were
that
always
was known.
fighting. That was just a, normal thing. No, they didn't like each other. They
Okay.
hated each other. And Homer, he had a couple of metal boats he used to rent, I remember, when they first built, when the lake filled up and all. And he worked on boat motors on there too. Had the Sinclair station. And then Dick Parrish come in and built the hardware next to that. And then later they took that whole thing. Well, they built a whole shopping center then there.
Boach Kimsey was in that.
Well, yeah,
And then Messer's Auto,
Messer, he had the Plymouth dealership.
yeah,
was it?
Plymouth dealership.
Oaquin, he had the Five and Dime store.
And also the,
And Smitty had a restaurant, and that whole thing burned. And I remember the Trailways bus burned up in there. They used to park it in there. They'd come from Atlanta up and spend the night. Matter of fact, Lorraine Bucket, she used to rent a room to the bus driver upstairs and, well, where the insurance is there, across this, from Georgia Mountain, the brick house there. There used to be a house that was moved from the lake over there. It was a two-story house. So she used to rent a room to the bus driver there. They'd stay. They gave her about 10 o'clock at night, and then he left 10 the next morning, I think. And it took you all day to get to Atlanta, and the rest of the day to get back.
now Homer Hunter was from Banks Camp. Didn't he come in with a CC camp
May have.
with Howard Owens, I think? Because Howard Owens and him were relatives.
W.O. Sparks, he came from Alabama here. That's some interesting stories there. His son, Roy, he was pretty wild. I don't know whether you remember the old school building or not. It was above the high school,
With the white columns.
big columns. That was there before that other school was built.
Right.
It was built when the TVA come in, I think, wasn't it?
Yes.
Roy took a 36 Ford all the way up the steps right into the hallway up there.
But he could do anything because he was W.O. Sparks' son.
Well, he married one of the Hedden girls. I forget which one.
No, did he?
He married Mike, remember Mike Hedden?
Yes,
Okay, his family, who was his father, married Roy.
first.
And W.O. didn't like that because he didn't figure that just a plain old girl from Hiawassee was not good enough for Roy. See, I used to get a lot of this information from Dean Birch. Dean worked for Old Man Sparks.
Oh, okay. And
Yeah.
Dean was Carrie's husband.
Yes, he was my father-in-law for a while there. So I used to get the good stories, So anyway, Roy married the girl there. W.O. didn't like it. So he sent him off down to Alabama, I think, somewhere, to get a divorce. And he got divorced and came back. Well, I think he was home 2 days and he married the girl again.
And this is the rich man of the county.
Yes, Yeah.
The banker.
the banker. And so W.O. wanted to get rid of him, it still wasn't good enough for him, So Dean told me, he said, he was in the banker, of course. Roy's mother babied him because he was the only child. And anything Roy wanted, he got. Okay?
Because Ad would give it to him.
Yeah, she would give it to him. The old man Sparks told him, he said, son, he said, I'll give you $100 a month, and that was a lot of money, and keep you in a new car if you'll just go out west, get a divorce, and, in other words, get out of my hair. And Roy said, hell no, I can get more here. So he divorced the Hedden girl again. So then he sent him down to Alabama, and he met Gertrude down there. And she was from a more respectable family in Mr. Sparks' view, and he married Gertrude. So, but that's some of the old stories.
Well, that's a good one. That's a real good.
Now, they used to tell the story when I was a kid. The Bank of Hiawassee was robbed at one time. They claim they burned up more money than they got, but anyway, the torch and everything that they cut into the vault with come out of the Ford garage, which is next door. It was right together. So they used to always say old man Sparks robbed his own bank. And some of them said there one time, Roy always had money, and he had some $20 bills. And they said, where did you get them? And he said, hell, Daddy's got a whole trunk full of them there at the house. So, of course, that was never proven or anything, you know, but
It was told. Okay, Carl Hedden.
yes,
Was,
nice lady.
because Carl Hedden, yeah,
Oh, okay.
Michael is Carl Hedden. Margie was the oldest one in Carl Hedden's family. Margie married Ray Nicholson. Margie did.
Oh, okay.
And then Carol, he was a cooster. Carol Hedden.
He used to run the radio shop there in
And you couldn't go in there without coming out laughing about something.
Oakwyn. He turned the grease room at Oakwyn's garage into a radio repair shop there.
Right.
And then he was in for a while in the Sonic Lodge building there too.
Yes, he was. And then there was Maisel that married Henry Hedden.
Yes, that's who I was trying to think of before. They came out and spent a couple, 3 nights with us in California when me and Chovy lived out there.
Yeah, because Henry Hedden was at Pearl Harbor.
Yes. Now, Henry's daughter, whatever happened to her?
Yes, Gwen, she
Gwen.
lives in Young Harry's.
Me and Chovy used to babysit her son when we first got married. Because she'd been babysitting her before. I never knew what happened to her when she grew up. And, we were
Yeah,
good
because the
friends with
son,
Henry.
Donald, there was Donald and Gwen. And then the Gene Hedden married Junior Nichols.
I was the same age as Lex was. Ralph was the younger one, and there was Alva, and I think another one or two. They had quite a few kids.
And Michael is my neighbor, and he married Margaret Birch from Hayesville. So that's an interesting thing. I didn't know Roy Sparks was ever married before, so he married one of the Carl Hedden's kids.
Twice, yeah.
Twice. No, twice. When they sold the Ford place,
Yeah.
and Dr. Acree and Nicholson bought the Ford place from Roy Sparks, well, they brought some cars in for people to see. All you could do was order out of a catalog when Roy had it.
Yeah.
And it like to worried him to death because they sold more cars in a year than he'd sold in 10.
Oh, yeah. Well, the old man Sparks, I remember I came home after I went to California, got a job, and we came back on vacation during the summer there once, and I went in there and I just got a 58 Ford, and I took it in there and had him change the oil in it, and old man Sparks come back there and he said, where you at now, son? I said, well, I'm working in California. He said, you know something? He said, I wish I was just a couple of 3 years younger. He said, I'd close this place up and go out where I could make some money, he said. And I thought to myself, owned most of the county then, you know.
Well, he did because he married Ad, who was in England.
So,
He come in here and he realized how much she had.
and then he foreclosed during the Depression on a lot of people and picked up the land that way.
Oh, yes.
So he wasn't hurting for any money. He told another little story that I can give you is,
A wood ring?
yeah, I think it was. He wanted to buy a 1956, 55 or 56 Ford Crown Victoria. And he wanted a pink and white. And he finally got married, I forgot who he married, but anyway, he worked in Atlanta and he was always fussy about his cars and everything, you know. I got Dick was always his byword, you know. And he went to Roy and he said he wanted to order that car. And Roy said, well, I tell you, he said, I'd rather you'd pick a different color. And he said, why? He said, well, I've got one ordered for my wife. And he said, that's the same color, and I wouldn't want two of them the same color here in town, he said. Well, he flew in, cussed him out, you know. And he went to Atlanta and bought the same color that he's trying to buy.
I'm trying to think what Woodring, he used to watch the Woodring, it had a lot of property up there on Owl Creek.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, Owl Creek.
He's a little short guy.
Yeah, a little short guy. Anyway, he would watch the papers, and if somebody had died and the daughter was listed as miss, he always sent him a letter. My Aunt Mary Will had a letter, and my Aunt Yule had a letter, and we looked at it, and it was the same one. So he must had them stacked up, ready to
Just
send.
ready to go. Just change the name on, add the name.
Oh, he had a wagon and he had so many acres of property. He was looking for a wife.
Look for a wife.
I don't think, did he?
He married Ellen, she used to hang around with Shelvagine.
Ellen, not the Woodring, no. Ellen Osborne was, she married the Holcomb. Ellen did.
Okay, I've got it mixed up.
Yeah, Ellen married the
She
Holcomb.
married Wendy Holcomb.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I don't know that the Woodring ever married.
He may have not, but he used to, the
guess-
guys used to ride home from Atlanta with him on the weekend when they were working down there, and he put papers in the floorboard all the time before he'd let them get in. I think he had a Cadillac then. And Edward Denton and them used to ride home with him. And Edward said he'd get up to a red light, he used to, the light hadn't even changed, and he'd start blowing the horn. And Edward said, hey, the light hadn't changed yet, you know. He said, yeah, but I want them ready when it does. He said, he was a little strange.
Oh, now I'm gonna pick your brain for just a second. The old buildings that the city's redoing.
Yeah.
Right there. Now, do you recall what was in those buildings?
Ed hadn't had a beer joint for quite a while in there. And
Where was the pool hall?
the pool hall was down next to Blanche's restaurant, that other half, that there wasn't a restaurant over there. The pool hall was in there for a while, and then, remember the brick building across the street there?
Yes,
They had the pool hall in there for a while, too.
Okay.
It was right next to, Fred Franks' restaurant.
right, yes. Had a general merchandise across the street there, too.
The other guy that finally took it over when they tore it down, he lived right next door to that.
Right, E.C. Presley.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Farrell
E.C.
Presley's father.
Yeah, had that big red brick building there.
Yeah.
And then the Wood had the store there, Miss Wood did. What was her name?
Pope Woods with her husband.
Yeah, Pope Woods, Pope Woods' wife, whatever her name was. Blanche Wood's husband was R.T. Wood.
Oh, okay.
And Blanche was Ted McConnell's sister.
Uh,
A lot of people didn't believe that. Now, Doc Waldrop was upstairs in that one that's got 2 stories. He used to be upstairs. Doc Waldrop did.
Yeah, before that, he used to be down there about where Monty Alban is now. Remember, he had a little
Yeah, he had a little concrete building down there.
expensive dental work then. You could get a tooth pulled for $1, I think he charged. So,
And then he up and married Hazel when his wife died, remember?
Yeah.
Hazel McGahat. But now Hazel McNabb had 2 kids when Doc Waldrop married. And they built where A&Z Outlet is now, across McDonald's.
Bill Creek.
Because,
Nugie was in there for a while.
yeah,
He
the
built
B&T was there.
B&T.
And the Nichols boys bought it, and they made music in that building for a good long while. And the electric was on the other side. Things have changed, but
Yeah.
you have given us some interesting facts. And I bet we can read this off, can't we? Only when
Yes.
David does the tape.
That is real interesting about.
Oh, I read it, and it is
Yeah.
very interesting. Yeah. And like the names of like the Tathams and everything else, I bet we can,
Maybe cross-reference some of those.
right, yes, uh-huh.
Yeah, the Joneses over there, the one I think I told you about it, Joshua Jones, he sold the property to Biltmore.
Over in Asheville?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh. Yeah.
No, that was about 8 grandpas back on me. I don't know whether that's covered in here or not.
Well, that is very interesting.
Probably is.
Because the Biltmores, they built that house, and that was one of the largest homes in America for a long
Yeah.
time.
Well, he's buried on that property over there. If you want to go to his grave, they have to take you out there.
Yes.
So it's still a little private graveyard, I guess they had. Well, they used to bury on your property then, back years ago. But they had a lot of, he had a large family, and it gets on down, you'll find some in this one. William Haynes Jones, Mary Ann Gudger Jones, trying to think. Then here's my grandpa. Okay, Zeb Jones, his father. He moved here from out in Buncombe County, Asheville area. And he built across the street from where Denton's Grill is there now. That little bungalow house has been there, it's been remodeled several times.
Yes.
Wilsons used to live there.
Right, the Wilson.
He lived there. So then Zeb, he came, and he built a place up on Buckscuffle there, about where Carl Edwards' place is now. Remember the old house there? Oscar used to live at Oscar Howe, had the big high porch.
Right.
So, they lived there. And then when they moved to South Georgia, they all up and moved except Ernest and Danny. So that's where, and you'll come in the
And they moved to Tifton, I think you said.
Tai-Tai
Tata,
Yeah.
okay.
area down there they call it Bunker Hill. We went down there when I was about 4 or 5 years old. I've got some pictures of me and a little white-faced calf standing in the,
But you've lived a very interesting life.
got around a little. Now this one here was, this was some of, in LeVar Burton, we were doing the Reading Rainbow on
Okay.
that, okay? He used my motor home for a dressing room and all that, and he gave me that autograph picture. And this is some of the others. This is a Reading Rainbow thing we were doing about the desert and all that. And then I did another Reading Rainbow. Here again is about the desert thing. And this gal here, she's from Horseshoe, North Carolina. And she worked on a ranch. They wanted some horses for this photo shoot they were doing. So that was my job, get out and round up what they needed and furnish the motor home and this and that. So I asked around to some people there, and they said, I forgot the girl's name now, but anyway, they said, oh, she's got some horses there. So I went up to see her, and I told her what I wanted. She said, yeah, we can do that. And that's why I asked her, I said, where are you from? And she said, well, I'm from North Carolina originally, a little town called Horseshoe. But she was good friends with some of the, with Gene Autry and the other guy that wrote the Christmas song. I'm trying to think of it there now.
Bing Crosby.
No. He's a country singer. Lived in Wilcox, Arizona. And we rented the horses from her, and they did some shots with that. And that was, we wanted to use their property. This was the Ford dealer in Benson, Arizona's home. And the photographer we had, he was about one of the top fashion photographers in the country. And Europe, it was El Uomo Vogue, the Italian Vogue magazine. And we went and filmed at his house there. Well, they wanted to do some topless shots. And we didn't know how his wife would go for that. So I got her to give me a tour of the house while we did the topless shots.
Oh, my, you little sneaks.
Well, they were paying me to earn my money.
You had to earn your money.
This whole crew here, Nicole and Stefana, they were from Italian Vogue magazine, okay? They're the ones that brought this group together. This girl here next to me, she was from Sweden, okay, Swedish girl. This girl here, she's from England, and her husband was a producer for the BBC. And then you had another guy that, the one the girls all got after was, he was from France. There's the one Swedish girl. This guy's from England. Everywhere we went, if we went to lunch or something, we went down there one day. And see, that was some of the things I had to get them away from before.
Oh, my gosh. Woo,
Well,
woo.
they look at things different than we do. Oh, anyway,
Yeah, a little topless there.
here's a better shot of this. We went to this restaurant, and this girl said, "Oh my God." She was, I think, a senior in high school. And she says, "I never saw such a beautiful guy as that." She said, "Oh, I'd like to get a picture of him." I said, "You want a picture of him?" She said, "Yeah." I said, "What if a picture of you and him together?" "Oh, my God," she says, you know. So, anyway, so I asked him, I said, "This young lady wants a picture with you." He said, "Sure." I thought she was going to faint, you know. But I did, he left a picture for me to give to her, and I went back down there after the shoot's over and everything. It's about 15, 20 miles out of Tucson there. And I said, "Somebody left you a picture." And I thought she was going to faint again. That was that same picture shoot. There's the guy that was a photographer. These girls told me, said, "We should pay him to work for him." I said, "Why?" They said, "Because he's the best in the business." And that goes on their resume. We work for him, then we can get more money the next year. So, I'll tell you what, this is a nice crew. There's a,
Another picture of your motorhome.
and it's a,
So you just cruised, right?
well, this was all in Tucson. We were doing the thing there. And there's another picture of the motorhome. This is another one. They wanted grass. He would say what he wanted, you know.
And you had to find it.
And I said, "Okay, I'll see what I can do." So look it up. Give them a little history of the area and all. So anyway. There's some about the missile site in Swanton where I worked. I was telling you about it. I went to Vermont. That was one we had at the silo in Swanton, and we had one in Alberg. And that's some pictures of the construction of it, this and that. The whole thing there, so one after it was installed and all. So there's some more stuff in it. It's my scrapbook and all that.
That's your scrapbook. You've done an excellent job keeping that scrapbook.
yeah.
So now,